In our hectic, everyday lives, everyone is constantly running a race to achieve more and be better, but only a few people truly reach their goals, while many others fall short. Every time we take a step toward our goals, a storm of doubts and worries floods our minds. Questions like, will I ever achieve it? Or, it's taking too long and I don't have enough time, creep in. We fear what people will say if we fail. But out of all these concerns, the biggest fear that plagues us is whether we'll succeed at all. Today, through this insightful Buddhist story, we'll learn how to overcome the fear of failure and understand why it arises in our minds in the first place. What are the reasons behind it? Let's dive into the story. A long time ago, a Buddhist monk built his small hut near a forest. This monk was known for his intelligence and wisdom. People from nearby villages would come to him with their troubles, and he would offer wise solutions that left everyone in awe. One day, while the monk was returning from a nearby village where he had gone for alms, a young man stopped him along the path. "I've heard you're able to solve anyone's problems with great wisdom," the young man said, skeptical. "I don't quite believe it, though. How could you solve my complex problem? Yet people tell tales of your intelligence. So I want to ask you something. Why do we fear failure in whatever we do? And how can we achieve our goals without that constant fear?" The monk smiled at the young man's question and replied, "I will certainly answer your question, and afterward all your worries will be put to rest. But first, you must walk with me to my hut." Curious and eager to test the monk's wisdom, the young man agreed, and together they headed into the forest toward the monk's humble dwelling. By the time they arrived, the sun had already begun to set. They ate a simple meal, and with the darkness of night upon them, they went to sleep. When the morning sun shone through the trees, the monk woke the young man. "Come with me for a walk in the woods," the monk said. The young man followed as they strolled through the thick forest until they reached a cave. "Let me show you around this cave," the monk suggested. The young man, feeling a surge of curiosity, agreed. "Yes, I've always wanted to explore a forest cave." Together they entered. The cave was dark, much darker than the forest outside. After some time of walking through the damp and dark cave, the monk silently slipped away and shut the door of the cave from the outside, leaving the young man trapped within. Suddenly, the young man realized he was alone, and fear gripped him. He shouted, "Where are you, monk? Why aren't you answering me?" His voice echoed, but no response came. Panic set in. He rushed to the cave entrance, but when he reached it, he was shocked to find it sealed. His heart pounded as he faced the reality of being locked inside a dark cave. The darkness was stifling, and a sense of hopelessness started creeping in. The young man wandered around, trying to find another exit, but to no avail. He felt a growing thirst and hunger, which only made his fear more intense. Finally, exhausted, he sat down, trying to collect his thoughts. Then, in the distance, he noticed something, a faint glimmer of sunlight coming from a small tunnel high above. It was almost impossible to reach, but in that moment, driven by the urge to survive, he stood up, all his fear forgotten. He was no longer thinking about his hunger or thirst. His focus narrowed entirely on one thing: escaping the cave. Determined, he began climbing toward the light, using every ounce of strength he had left. The tunnel was high, the climb difficult, but he did not give up. He continued to pull himself up until, finally, he saw the monk at the top, extending a hand to help. Without hesitation, the young man grabbed the monk's hand, and he was pulled out into the sunlight. Angry and confused, the young man shouted, "What is wrong with you? Are you mad? You left me alone in that dark cave. Do you have any idea how scared I was, how thirsty and hungry I felt?" The monk, calm as ever, handed the young man a cup of water and smiled gently. "Now, listen carefully to what I have to say. You managed to get out of the cave for two reasons. The first reason is that you were extremely thirsty and hungry. It was your desperate need for relief that pushed you. And the second reason is that you felt suffocated because you were used to being surrounded by people, family, friends. You felt abandoned and alone, which made you determined to escape. The monk continued, "Now, let me explain why you were able to find your way out of the cave. There were two main reasons for this. First, there were no people around you to say, 'How are you going to reach that tunnel? It's too high, it's too dark, this is impossible.' And second, there was no one else to suggest, 'Let's find an easier way out, maybe there's a simpler solution.' You were left alone with one choice, to focus only on that light and find your way to it. Achieving success in life works in the same way. I created a small world for you in that cave to show you this. But the real world is much more complicated. In real life, we are surrounded by countless people giving us advice. People who themselves might have never dared to pursue anything difficult, yet they are quick to say, 'Don't do this, it's too hard, you won't succeed, try something easier.' And when we hear such voices, we begin to doubt ourselves. One major reason many people don't achieve success is because the journey is long and tiring. Our minds, naturally restless, change direction even within an hour. So, after months or years of chasing a goal, it's no wonder we often give up and look for other paths. Gautama Buddha used to tell his disciples that we only see obstacles when we take our eyes off our goals. This is absolutely true. Think about an archer. When he is about to release an arrow, he closes one eye and focuses entirely on the target. That's the only way he can hit his mark. The same goes for us. We fear failure when we allow our focus to drift from our goals to the difficulties in our way. In that cave, you couldn't see anything except the sunlight coming from the tunnel. If the cave had been lit, you would have seen the pits, the insects, and all the other frightening things there. You would have been scared and wandered aimlessly, without direction. But in that darkness, with only the light to guide you, you concentrated solely on reaching it. That's why, in life, we must keep our attention firmly on our goals. Stop worrying about what's happening around you, what others are saying, or what your friends and relatives are doing. Whether they succeeded or not is irrelevant. What matters is your own journey. If you focus solely on your path, then, when the time comes, others will stand and applaud your success." After finishing his explanation, the monk fell silent, looking at the young man with a kind gaze. The young man, deeply moved, responded, "Today you have opened my eyes, sage. Every word of yours holds such deep wisdom. I understand now why everyone speaks so highly of you. I promise you, from today onwards, I will not let the fear of failure haunt my mind. I will focus only on my work, and soon I will prove myself as a successful person." With gratitude in his heart, the young man thanked the monk and returned to his village, carrying with him the invaluable lesson that would change his life forever.